Tears streamed down her face as he dragged him away. Imagine being trapped in your own home. Not by choice, not for safety, but because someone decided your life, your freedom, was worth less than nothing. That was Sarah's world, a tiny, run-down rental cottage on the outskirts of a forgotten country town, where the paint peeled like sunburnt skin and the silence was only broken by the wind whistling through the gum trees. She was a ghost in her own life, tethered to this place by fear and a door that her ex, Mitch, had fixed so it would jam from the inside. But what no one in the quiet town knew was that Sarah had a secret. A small, precious piece of her life that had come into the world 4 years ago. Her son, Leo, a little boy with a mop of sandy hair, big curious eyes, and the softest hands. Sarah cared for him with all the love she herself had never received. She kept him close, always between her body and the drafts that crept through the walls. She slept little, ate less, her only purpose was to protect him. Leo was her everything. They lived there, between the cracked linoleum and the dusty yard, a forgotten corner between the state forest and the creek. Sarah didn't know the warmth of a safe home, but she made her own body a refuge for her son. She'd kiss his head softly, whisper stories only he could hear, and every time the little boy stirred in his sleep, her heart beat stronger. She'd never had something so truly hers. But that morning, the air smelled different, the sky was a low, bruised grey, the kookaburras weren't laughing, and Leo was sleeping soundly, curled up on the sofa. Sarah woke with a jolt, a cold dread in her stomach. Something was wrong, and then she heard it. The crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. A sound that didn't belong. It wasn't the postie, it wasn't a neighbor, it was him, a tall man in dirty work boots and stained jeans. His old, beaten-up ute coughing to a stop outside. Mitch. Sarah scrambled to her feet, her body instantly shielding the sleeping form of her son. Her eyes, always tired, now burned with terror. She let out a low sound, not of aggression, but of pure desperation. Mitch didn't say a word. He kicked the door, the wood groaning. He knew about the jam. He kicked it again, harder, and the cheap lock splintered. He walked in, slow and sure, as if he already knew what he was going to do. Sarah pulled Leo behind her, dragging him towards the back room. But it was useless. Mitch stretched out his arm and with a coldness that didn't belong in the light of day. He grabbed Leo by the arm. He lifted him like he was a sack of potatoes. As if the boy weighed nothing. As if he felt nothing. Sarah screamed. Yes, she screamed with her entire body. With all her love, with all her fear. But Mitch didn't stop. He turned, dragging a confused, crying Leo in one hand, and started walking back to the ute. The engine roared to life. Sarah threw herself at the broken door. But he was already gone, peeling out onto the dirt track, heading towards the creek. She couldn't believe it. She couldn't understand. Her only son, her only reason to breathe. They were taking him, and all she could do was watch and scream. The sound of the ute's engine faded between the trees, and with every second that passed, Sarah felt a piece of her soul being ripped away. She wanted to tear the world apart with her cries, but she had no strength left, only love, and that love was being torn from her chest. Mitch didn't look back, didn't hesitate. He drove straight, confident, like someone who had done this before. Sarah clawed at the splintered doorframe. Desperate, there was blood under her fingernails, tears streaking the grime on her face. But no one could hear her. The sun was barely up, and the world seemed asleep. But she was wide awake in the worst nightmare of her life. A few hundred meters away, the creek murmured. It wasn't a big creek, but after the heavy spring rains, the brown water churned and rose, strong enough to swallow anything. It was deep, cold, and often carried away branches, leaves, and sometimes, things people no longer wanted. Sarah had only ever heard it from a distance. Now, that same creek seemed to be waiting. Mitch reached the edge. Leo was crying now, not understanding. His little legs kicked. His face was a mess of confusion and fear. Mitch looked around. No one, just the wind, the rustling gums, the silence. And then, without care, without a second glance, he pushed Leo out of the ute, near the muddy, crumbling bank, as if he were just a piece of rubbish in the way. Wait for your mum here, he spat, before getting back in the ute and speeding away. Sarah, from a distance, felt it all. She didn't need to see. Her heart already knew what was coming. She was howling now, a sound that wasn't of this world. It was the cry of a mother about to lose everything. It was the kind of sound that would make anyone with a heart weep. But nobody was around, nobody to listen. And then, as if the universe had stabbed her, she heard a faint splash. The dull sound of something falling into water. Plash, and then, silence. Sarah collapsed. Her body gave out. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't understand why. Who would do something like this? And why was she, who had never hurt anyone, trapped while her son disappeared into a rising creek? But then something inside her shifted. A lightning bolt in the darkness. A spark. A fire. She stood up, took a ragged breath, and without thinking, she threw her entire weight against the jammed door. Crack. The old wood of the frame finally gave way. Sarah didn't hesitate. She ran. The pain didn't matter. The fear didn't matter. She had to get there. And as she ran, her bare feet sinking into the mud, tears mixing with dirt on her face, a single idea gave her strength. I can still save him. Sarah ran like never before. Her thin body seemed to fly through the scrub. Branches scratched her skin. Sharp rocks cut her feet. But she didn't stop, not for a second. Every step was a prayer. Every leap a lament. And in her head, the only thought was, don't be too late. When she arrived, the creek was there, calm, silent, treacherous. The brown water moved slowly, as if hiding secrets, as if it had already taken something and wanted to forget. Sarah stopped dead. Her feet sank into the mud. Her eyes, wide with panic, searched desperately through the current. Nothing, no sign of a little boy. No small jacket, nothing, just water, dirty, cold, immense water. She got closer. Her hands touched the edge. The earth was wet, slippery, the wind blew, and there she was, alone, a mother, without a son, without anyone. Her eyes scanned the water as if she could part it with her will. She looked for a sign, a sound, a movement, but the creek doesn't answer. It never does. Sarah fell to her knees, burying her face in the mud. She let out a long, low moan, a sound that wasn't of this world. It was pure, raw, deep pain, because it wasn't just a child, it was her only family. Her hope, her reason, and he had been stolen from her without reason, without forgiveness. A few minutes passed, then she got up, not because she had strength, not because she expected to find him, but because her heart wouldn't let her do nothing. She took a few steps along the bank, sniffing the air, searching, clawing at the mud with her hands. She stretched as far as she could, as if her body wanted to reach further than her eyes. And suddenly, a piece of blue plastic, a toy shovel, floated past her. Her heart stopped. It was his. Sarah collapsed again. Her chest heaved like a drum. Her eyes burned like fire. Her whole body trembled. And then she howled, a howl that split the morning, that made the birds fall silent, that broke the air into 1,000 pieces. A howl that came from the deepest part of her soul, from that place where only a mother's love lives. And if anyone for kilometers around had heard it, they would have wept, but there was no one. Just her, the creek, and the memory of her son. Sarah remained there, standing firm, her gaze locked on the water. She looked like a statue, a shadow with eyes, a piece of grief stuck to the edge of the world. The sun had risen a little higher, but its light brought no warmth, only illuminating the scene, a mother with a broken heart. Until, in the distance, the crunch of a mountain bike on the gravel track. It was Liam, a 15-year-old who always took this path to get to the trails in the forest. That morning, like many others, he was riding without a care, but as he rounded the bend by the creek, he slammed on his brakes. The scene froze him, a woman, alone, covered in mud, staring at the creek as if her life was in it. Liam didn't know much about people, but something in that image made him get off his bike. He approached slowly. "Hey, you all right?" he whispered, as if she could answer. And in that moment, Sarah turned her head, her eyes, God, they were two dark lakes filled with a sadness so deep it felt bottomless. She didn't speak, she didn't move, she just looked at him, and Liam felt something tighten in his chest. A question without words. He stood still, he didn't know what to do, but he knew he couldn't leave. His hands trembling, he pulled out his phone, took a photo, and typed a quick message. "Dunno what's happened, but this lady is in real trouble. Someone come, I'm on the creek track near the old bridge." He sent it to the town's community Facebook group, one of those groups where everyone talks about everything and nothing. But that day, they responded. 5 minutes passed, and 2 women from a nearby property arrived. Then a young tradie in his ute. Then an older woman who ran the local bakery. In less than half an hour, 5 people were standing around the creek, looking at Sarah, and nobody spoke, because they didn't need to. They all felt it. Something terrible had happened here. One of the women crouched down. "What's happened, love?" she asked, though she already imagined the worst. Liam explained what little he knew. Then the woman from the bakery pointed at the ground. "Are those a child's footprints?" Everyone looked. They were small, leading to the water's edge. And then they were gone. The silence grew heavier. Did anyone? No one finished the sentence. No one wanted to be the first to say it. But they all thought it. One of the women pulled out her phone and dialed quickly. 000. "Which service do you require?" "Police and ambulance," she said. her voice shaking. "We need help, urgently. There's a woman here. It looks like someone's hurt her, and something's been thrown in the creek." She gave them the location. Meanwhile, Liam moved closer, crouching a few meters from Sarah. "You're not alone, you know," he said softly. "They're coming to help you." And for the first time, Sarah seemed to register him. It was a flicker, but it was enough. Sarah was still, not because she wanted to be, but because she could do no more. Her body was exhausted, her soul wounded, her heart hanging by a thread. But even though she seemed defeated, she was still waiting for a miracle that only a desperate mother could imagine. A few minutes later, an engine was heard, the deep rumble of a 4WD, a white truck with an orange logo on the side, says State Emergency Service, rounded the corner. Hope. Two people got out, a young woman with her hair in a neat braid, and an older man in a wide-brimmed hat and worn work boots. Chloe and Barry, volunteers, the kind who have seen it all but never get used to the pain. "Where is she?" Chloe asked, wasting no time. Liam pointed. Everyone moved aside, and Sarah, as if she understood, straightened up a little. The young woman crouched down slowly, not speaking to her like a victim, but like someone who was grieving. "Hello there," she said gently. "My name is Chloe. We're here to help. We're not going to hurt you." Sarah didn't step back, didn't move closer. She just looked at her, and that look was enough for Chloe to feel tears welling in her own eyes. Barry got straight to the point. "Does anyone know what happened?" Liam spoke, then one of the neighbors, then all of them together. The pieces started to fit. The ex-boyfriend, the child, the ute, the creek, the silence. Barry's face hardened. He walked to the edge, pulling a long hook from the back of the truck. The group held its breath. Barry prodded the murky water. Nothing. The current was too fast now. Whatever went in was long gone. The confirmation of what they all knew. Sarah let out a soft whimper, as if that discovery had reopened her wound. Chloe moved closer and, without asking permission, put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I don't know who did this. But you won't be alone anymore." And Sarah, for the first time since it all began, closed her eyes. It wasn't resignation, it was relief. "We need to get her out of here," Barry said gruffly. "She's in shock, dehydrated. Look at her feet. Her soles were cut and bleeding, caked in dry mud." They wrapped her in a thermal blanket, helped her gently into the back of the truck. Chloe sat with her the whole way. Sarah didn't move, but she didn't resist either. And in her slow breathing, there was something new, not hope, not yet, but a pause, a truce, a small breath after so much pain. The truck stopped in front of a modest brick building with a sign that read, "The Haven Women's Shelter." It was a simple place. No luxuries, but it had what really mattered, people with heart. Chloe helped Sarah out, treating her as if she were made of glass. Barry went ahead to clear the way with that steady pace of a man who's seen too many bad days. "We've got an emergency," he called out. Two support workers came out, one with a soft blanket, the other with wide eyes at the state Sarah was in. She was thin, covered in dry mud, with a lost look in her eyes. But she was still breathing. And that was a start. They placed her carefully on a warm bed inside the medical room. There, with soft light and the smell of disinfectant, the care began. Chloe knelt beside her, speaking as if she'd known her forever. "You're here now. You're safe. The worst is over." Sarah didn't move. Her eyes were open, but she seemed not to be there, as if her soul had stayed behind on the bank of the creek. They cleaned her feet, put her on an IV drip, and offered her a warm cup of soup. Nothing. She didn't react. "What do we put on her file?" one of the workers asked. Chloe thought for a moment. Sarah, just Sarah, for survivor, because that's what she is. Hours passed. They tucked her in, stroked her hair, spoke to her softly, but she remained wrapped in a sadness that clung to her body. Until, late that afternoon, Liam appeared. He'd come with his mum, carrying an old blanket and a small, sealed chocolate bar. "It's for her," he said quietly. Chloe let him in. The boy sat down gently next to the bed. Sarah recognized him instantly, and for the first time, she reacted, a tiny flicker of her eyelids. Barely there, but enough. Liam smiled a sad smile and whispered, "I promise, you're not going to be alone anymore, okay?" And that night, for the first time since everything happened, Sarah slept without nightmares, without fear, without cold, just her body wrapped in blankets, and her soul a little less broken. The days passed slowly. The clock seemed to move with a heavy heart, and Sarah remained silent. She ate a little, walked unsteadily, and slept for hours, but what hurt the most was her gaze. It was still just as empty. Every morning, Chloe would come in with her soft voice. "How are we this morning, love?" She'd bring tea, toast, A gentle touch on the arm. Sometimes Sarah would let her. Sometimes she would simply ignore her. But there was one thing she did every single day: stare at the door. With hope, with pain, with the silent waiting that only a mother can understand. One night, Sarah began to cry in her sleep. Soft, broken sobs, as if dreaming of what she'd lost and waking to realize it was real. Chloe stayed with her until dawn, sitting there, not saying anything, just being there, because sometimes, that's all you can do. Accompany the pain. Liam kept visiting daily. He brought magazines, biscuits, even a small radio with quiet music. They say music helps, he told her one day. Sarah would now let him sit beside her. She'd rest her head near his feet. Sometimes she closed her eyes. Other times she just took a deep breath. It was a small thing, but for someone who had lost everything, it was a universe. One rainy afternoon, Barry stopped by the shelter. "How's our survivor?" And Chloe didn't answer right away. She just looked at Sarah and said quietly, "She's better on the outside. But inside, she's still broken." Barry fell silent, observed her, and then said, "You know what she needs? An answer, even if she can't find what she's looking for. She needs to close that wound." And right then, Chloe knew what she had to do. The next day dawned overcast, with that kind of grey that doesn't promise rain, just nostalgia. Chloe looked at Sarah, wrapped in her blanket. She'd been wondering for days what more she could do. Now she knew. "We're going back," she whispered. Barry, who heard from the doorway, nodded. "Are you sure? She's not going to heal here." Chloe replied, "Not completely. She needs to close that chapter." They prepared the truck early. Liam insisted on coming too. He didn't want to leave her alone. They wrapped her in a warm jacket, packed water, food, a tarp in case it rained. But most of all, they brought patience. Sarah didn't protest when they helped her into the truck. She didn't seem happy or sad. She just let herself be taken, like someone going to a place they don't want to go, but need to. During the drive, Liam rested his hand gently on her arm. "We're not going for him," he said in a low voice. "We're going for you." And though she said nothing, Sarah let out a long sigh, not of tiredness, but of resignation, as if she understood. They arrived at the same spot, the same gravel track, the same sound of the creek. Sarah got out slowly. She didn't run, she didn't tremble, she just walked, and each step felt as heavy as a stone. She approached the spot where she had last stood, sniffed the air, stood still, then turned towards the water. The creek ran peacefully, as if it remembered nothing. But Sarah did. She walked to the bank. Chloe and Liam watched from a distance. Sarah looked down, smelled the mud, scraped at it with the toe of her shoe. She stared at the current. And then, she let out a cry. It wasn't loud, it wasn't long, but it was different. It was a cry of goodbye, of letting go, and for the first time, she sat down calmly, at peace. Chloe knelt beside her. "You did well, Sarah. You gave it everything. Now, it's time to heal." Sarah turned her head, looked at her, and her eyes, finally, were not empty. On the way back in the truck, Sarah curled up, resting her head on Liam's lap. He stroked her hair. "You're back now, and we're going to look after you. Always." Since they returned from the creek, something changed in Sarah. It wasn't magic, it wasn't fast, but it was noticeable. She no longer stared at the door all day. She no longer woke up crying. She no longer stood still like a statue for hours. Now, she would get up on her own, walk in the small garden, even offer a faint smile when Chloe or Liam arrived. Small gestures, but in Sarah's world, they were giant leaps. Liam kept visiting every day after school. He told her about his mates, read her chapters from a book, even gave her a nickname. "You're not just Sarah Survivor anymore. You're Sarah the Strong." And when she heard it, she squeezed his hand. One morning, Chloe arrived at the shelter and noticed something different at the front desk. There was a note with her name on it. She opened it carefully. Inside was a crumpled piece of paper and a photo. A blurry phone photo of a small boy, with sandy hair and a small, distinct mole on his cheek, identical to the one Sarah had. The note read, "Found him wandering near the highway 2 days ago. Was alone and crying. We don't know who he belongs to. But we took him to the local police. And they brought him here. We couldn't stay, but we trust you'll know what to do." Chloe's heart stopped. She ran to the children's wing where they keep new arrivals. And there he was, small, thin, with big, round eyes and the same face as his mother. "Sarah," she yelled, her voice cracking. "Come here, love." Sarah appeared from the common room, walking calmly, but as she reached the doorway, something made her freeze. Her eyes locked on the little boy. The boy looked at her. And for a few seconds, the world stood still. There was no sound, just recognition. Sarah walked slowly towards him. The boy toddled towards the doorway. And when they were inches apart, They both began to cry. A soft, quiet cry that only they could understand. Sarah fell to her knees. Her arms open, the boy ran into them. And when they touched, they held each other, they found each other. Chloe collapsed against the wall, covering her mouth. It can't be, it's him. Liam, who had just arrived, couldn't say a word. He just walked over and watched them in silence. And for the first time in a long, long time, Sarah was smiling, a real, beautiful smile. After the reunion, the entire shelter seemed to hold its breath. The other workers stopped what they were doing. Barry, who had come by, took off his hat. Chloe couldn't stop crying. Liam just stared at Sarah and her son as if he were witnessing a miracle. And maybe he was. Sarah wouldn't let him go. She kissed him all over, smelled his hair, his cheeks, his little hands, as if she needed to make sure he was real. The boy, Leo, snuggled against her. He was trembling, but not from fear. It was emotion. It was relief. It was home. Liam knelt down and asked, "What's his name?" Chloe smiled, her eyes red. "You found her, mate. You decide what to call him in your heart." Liam thought for a second and said, "Leo. He looks like a Leo. Brave little lion." Sarah's eyes lit up when she heard the name. And Leo giggled. The next few hours were pure tenderness. Leo didn't leave his mother's side. He slept pressed against her. Sarah held him with her arms. And it almost looked like she was smiling in her sleep. They ate together, lay on the same bed. And for the first time, Sarah spoke in a soft, clear voice, a voice full of joy. And everyone, absolutely everyone in the shelter, cried. But it wasn't all just joy. That same evening, Chloe called Barry. "We need to talk." They sat with warm cups of tea while the shelter slept. "Look, Sarah is okay, better than ever, but we can't keep him here forever." Barry nodded. "We need to find him a home. Together." "Yes, together," Chloe insisted. "We can't separate them, but it has to be someone special. Very special, more than that," Barry said. "Someone who understands them, who doesn't just see a woman and a child, but a family that was reborn." And so a new chapter began. The shelter prepared a post for their social media page. Liam took a photo of Sarah and Leo hugging. They uploaded it with a simple phrase, "She cried as he was taken away. Today, she smiled again. Sarah and Leo are looking for a forever home. Together." The photo was posted on a Friday afternoon. Sarah holding Leo, both snuggled under a blue blanket. Their eyes said everything. The post began to be shared. First by locals, then by support networks, then by people all over Australia. In a matter of hours, it went viral. The comments poured in. "What a heartbreaking story. I'm in tears. I hope they find a home. Do not separate this mother from her son. Please." Many offered help, donations, clothes, toys, even money for the shelter. But finding a real family wasn't so easy. 2 days passed. Sarah and Leo were still together. Happy, their hearts calmer, but still without a fixed destination. Until, on Monday morning, the shelter's phone rang. Chloe answered with her usual kind voice. "The Haven." Chloe speaking. "Yes, good morning. I'm calling about Sarah and Leo." The voice was a woman's. Firm and clear, the tone of someone who has already made a decision. Chloe sat up straighter. "You saw their story?" "I saw it online, and I couldn't stop thinking about them. Not once, not twice. All weekend, I kept thinking about that look in her eyes." Chloe swallowed hard. "Do you have experience with complex cases?" "Yes," the woman replied. "I'm a widow, lost my own husband a few years back. I know about grief, and I think Sarah found me." The woman's name was Grace. She lived on the outskirts of the region, on a small property surrounded by trees and silence. She was 62, with a gentle voice and a soul bigger than most. "I don't want them to keep me company," she said. "I want to keep them company." Chloe hung up with tears in her eyes. "Barry," she said, "I think we found her." On Tuesday morning, an old blue ute pulled up to the shelter. A short woman with white hair in a braid got out, wearing a simple dress and with eyes that said everything without speaking. "Are you Grace?" Chloe asked. "Yes, love. I've come for them." Chloe smiled. Liam was there too, giving Leo a final hug. Sarah watched from the doorway, wary, but Leo, as if he knew something, ran right up to her. Grace knelt down, picked him up without fear, and spoke to him as if they already knew each other. "Hello, little one. I'm here now. Will you let me look after you?" Leo giggled and touched her cheek. And Sarah. Sarah approached slowly. She didn't flinch. She didn't tremble. She just looked at her and lowered her head. Grace stroked her arm. "No one is ever going to hurt you again, my dear. I swear it." They spent an hour talking. Grace showed him photos of her property, of the garden where she liked to sit under the lemon trees. "I don't have much money," she said, "but I have love to spare and space for them to run until they're tired." Barry nodded from behind. This woman had what it took. In the end, Chloe knelt beside Sarah. You've done your part, Sarah. You survived. You cried. You waited. And now, it's your turn to live. Sarah rested her head on Chloe's shoulder. Leo climbed onto his mum's lap. As he always did, Grace opened the back door of the ute, laid down a blanket, a small basket with toys, and even an old t-shirt with her perfume on it. So they don't feel so strange at first, she said. As they drove away, Liam ran a few steps behind. Sarah, Leo, look after yourselves. Sarah looked out the window and waved. A real, strong wave. Leo let out a little shout, as if to say, thank you. Chloe couldn't hold back her tears. They're leaving whole, and that's the most beautiful thing of all. The drive to the property was long but peaceful. Leo slept curled up on the seat next to Grace, and Sarah stayed awake, her head resting against the window, watching the trees go by as if she could finally breathe in peace. You'll be all right here, my loves, Grace would say every so often. This place saved me, too. When they arrived, the sun was beginning to set. The property was humble but full of life. Bougainvillea bushes everywhere, a wooden fence that creaked in the wind, and chickens that walked around like they owned the place. Sarah got out slowly, smelled the grass, the earth, the air. Leo ran out, darted between Grace's legs, jumped over a sack of feed, and ended up rolling in a pile of dry leaves. Grace let out a laugh. Leo, don't get all dirty now, you little rascal. Sarah watched him from a distance, with that glow that only mothers have when they see their children happy. That night, Grace made them rice with chicken and a little warm soup. She put 2 bowls on the veranda and a double blanket in the corner by the wall. Sarah ate calmly. Leo devoured his like it was a party. And afterwards, they fell asleep together, on top of each other, warm, breathing in rhythm, for the first time, with no fear of waking up. In the morning, Sarah already felt like she belonged. She explored the yard, played for a bit with an old cat that was wandering around. She even dared to dip her nose in a bucket of water with floating flowers. Grace watched her from her rocking chair. You look so beautiful without sadness, my girl. The days passed. Leo grew quickly. He got taller, his belly rounded out, and he developed a habit of sleeping on his back. Sarah became more confident, stronger, more herself, and every afternoon, Grace would talk to them like they were her grandchildren. Are you tired of running yet? Or are you going to keep digging until you get to China? The 3 of them formed a routine so perfect that neither time, nor loneliness, nor scars could break it. It was a normal afternoon. The wind was blowing gently. Leo was chasing butterflies and Sarah was sleeping in the shade of a guava tree. Grace was knitting in her wicker chair, humming an old lullaby. Everything seemed at peace, until a sound broke the moment. An old, loud, familiar engine. Sarah's eyes shot open. She sprang to her feet. The dust on the track announced someone was coming. Grace stood up. Who could that be at this hour? The ute stopped right in front of the gate. It was the same one. The one belonging to the man who had once terrorized her and taken her son. It was Mitch. He got out, thinner, with dark circles under his eyes. But it was him, and as soon as he set foot out of the vehicle, Sarah let out a low, deep growl from the bottom of her chest. Her body was tense, her feet firm, her gaze locked on him. Leo, who was nearby, hid behind her. Grace didn't understand what was happening. You know him, dear? Sarah didn't take her eyes off him. She didn't attack, but her body spoke clearly. Danger. The man raised his hands. I'm not here to do anything. I just wanted to know if she was still alive. Grace walked towards him with a firmness unexpected for her age. And who are you to come asking that? After what you did? He looked down. I don't know. I saw her photo, her story, and it did something to me. Right here. He touched his chest. I haven't slept since. Grace looked at him with contained rage. A bit late, isn't it? Sarah didn't move, but her eyes did. They filled with something that wasn't fear. It was strength. Leo peeked out from behind her, looked at the man, and then sat beside his mum, as if to say, we don't belong to you anymore. We belong to her, and we're fine here. The man swallowed hard. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Grace didn't answer. And Sarah turned around. She walked back to the tree where she always slept and lay down calmly. Because this time, she was in control. The man left without another word. His shoulders slumped. Grace walked over to Sarah, stroking her head. It's over, my girl. It's over. He can't hurt you anymore. Sarah closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Not of fear, but of liberation. After that unexpected encounter, something changed in the air. As if the property itself could breathe more easily. As if Sarah had finally cut the last string that tied her to her pain. The following days were warm and quiet. Leo was inseparable from her. They slept together, played together, even ate from the same bowl when Grace wasn't looking. Sarah no longer woke up startled. She no longer looked back. Now she ran forward, looking only at the present. Grace noticed everything, every small change, every new gesture. "You seem lighter, love," she'd say while brushing Sarah's hair, "as if you've finally put down a weight you were never meant to carry." Sarah would lie back, closing her eyes, feeling the sun on her skin. Leo would leap through the flowers, chasing insects, barking at the wind as if it were an endless game. One morning, Liam came to visit. As soon as he got out of the car, Leo launched himself at him, covering his face in happy licks. Sarah greeted him with a gentle nudge of her head. Liam knelt and hugged them both. "You have no idea how much I missed you guys." Grace watched him with tenderness. "Want to stay for lunch? We've got pasta, garlic bread, and lemonade." "Yes please," the boy said with a huge grin. They ate under a tree. Liam told Sarah what had happened at the shelter, that a new family had arrived, that Barry had a new hat, and that Chloe had rescued a cat who thought he was a dog. Sarah listened attentively. Leo fell asleep between her legs. And there, with the boys' laughter, the scent of the countryside, and the beautiful silence that only places with soul can offer, the story began to close. That night, under a sky full of stars, Grace brought a quilt out to the veranda. She lay down, and Sarah settled beside her. Leo curled up at their feet. "Thank you for choosing me," she whispered to them. "I thought I was rescuing you, but in the end, you rescued me." And there, under that immense sky, with a healed heart and a complete family, Sarah closed her eyes, without fear, for the first time in her life. Months passed. Leo grew strong, with a broad chest just like his mum's spirit. He loved to run through the fields, roll in the mud, and sleep with his legs in the air. But what he loved most was being with Sarah. Always together, always close. Grace became their grandmother. She cared for them, spoiled them, and spoke to them like people. And the truth is, they understood. One ordinary afternoon, Sarah was resting on a large outdoor lounge. Leo jumped up behind her, and Grace covered them with a plaid blanket. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky orange. "It's exactly 1 year today," the woman whispered, "that you came into my life. Sarah, and you too, Leo." Sarah looked up at her with those wise eyes and sighed contentedly. That night, Grace wrote something in an old notebook she always kept on her bedside table. "I'll never forget how they arrived. One terrified, the other lost. Today, they walk like royalty on this land. They taught me that love doesn't need words, only presence. Thank you for choosing me." She closed the notebook, turned off the lamp, and went outside to look at the stars. And there they were, Leo and Sarah, asleep under the sky, one holding the other, breathing in rhythm, at peace. Grace sat beside them. "Everything you went through wasn't to break you," she said softly. "It was so you could find each other." With a calm smile, she added, "And you're staying here with me, forever." Sarah was never the same again, because she was no longer the abandoned woman, nor the broken mother, nor the sad soul who cried while her child was torn from her. Now she was Sarah the strong, the one who survived, who fought, who learned to love again. And Leo, the one who was once taken away, came back to teach everyone that true love always finds its way home. If you made it this far, thank you. Thank you for feeling this story with us. If it touched your heart, if you thought of someone you love, of the struggles people endure and the hope that can follow, we want to know. Tell us in the comments where you're listening from. Do you have a similar story of resilience? And please, never abandon, never hurt, never ignore someone in pain, because to them, your kindness could be everything. If this story moved your soul, share it with someone who needs a reason to believe in hope.